There seems to be a diagnosis, very practical diagnosis here of the student's experience of being, trousered apes. That probably sounds like a diss to them, but this idea that on the one hand, the cultural water they swim in is telling them that their moral and spiritual lives are entirely up to them. It's not something that is handed down to them. It's not an objective thing out there to be discovered or known. It's something that is entirely up to them. It's self-creative. And that, I mean, it's as simple as I just saw one of my students walking through town with a t-shirt that read, "You do you," 3 words, "You do you." And that sort of like, I think captures the philosophy of the age, the kind of practical expression of subjectivism, emotivism, all these big ideas. On the other hand, we have, I think, the shadow of this inheritance as well, which is a strong understanding of the soul and the inner depths of the human being. So Charles Taylor writes this great long book, The Sources of the Self, in which he tries to kind of genealogical map. How did we come up with the notion of the self? Well, it's got inheritance of Platonic soul, Augustinian, sort of soul before God, all these things. But that sense of the inner depth, the shadow of the soul of the self, that feeling is a feeling that is not saying that my students, I think, and maybe me too, are not experiencing as, oh, this is just totally up to you. It's totally random to be manipulated and created. It's a true self. There's a true you in there. And if you don't get your external reality to line up with what is truly in there, then you're going to be unhappy, or worse than being unhappy, you're inauthentic to the true self. And so we're kind of culturally, we're told it's totally relative and up to you. And yet internally, you're still tormented by the sense of being a true you. I wonder how does Lewis help us out of that? What I think is a very unhappy, anxiety producing predicament for young people to be formed in.
Yeah, it is a very anxiety-producing predicament, and it springs from this false opposition between this idea of the crushing absolutism of objective reality and this invertebrate centerlessness of personal identitarianism on the other hand. And again, that's a false opposition. That's just a polarity which we needn't go along with. And I think this again is one of the balancing acts that Lewis brings off in The Abolition of Man, that he's not saying, although he's arguing, as I've said, for the objectivity of value, he's not saying therefore we all become identical, that we just turn into cookie-cuttered human beings. We still have value as individuals. We may have to reckon with and grapple with an objective reality, but it is we subjects who do that grappling. And we have value as subjects. We shouldn't fall into subjectivism, but we cannot escape subjectivity. And indeed, one of the reasons we have been made as individuals is because we each have a unique subjectivity. We each play a unique instrument in the divine orchestra. And Lewis is very good on this in works like The Four Loves, for instance, where he's talking about friendship and how each friend brings out a different aspect of every other friend that only he can bring out. So when Charles dies, I lose not only Charles, but I lose that part of Ronald which Charles could bring out. And he's there talking about Charles Williams and Ronald Tolkien, the Inklings. We need each other in order to be ourselves.